make many chains, as many as you feel will cover half of your bust measurement. And don't worry, if there is any excess yarn, we will cut it at the end. So just make roughly as many chains as you feel will cover half of your bust measurement. Into the third chain, count 1, 2, 3. Into the third chain, make a double crochet, and these two count as 2 double crochets. Skip the next 2 chains, so you skip this, you skip the next. Into the third one, make a double crochet and make 2 more double crochets at the same place. Again, skip the next 2 chains, you skip this, you skip the next. Into the third, make 3 double crochets. Keep repeating that until you have half of your bust measurement minus 5 centimeters. I'm removing 5 centimeters so that the cardigan will be a little bit tight on me. That's how I want it. But if you want it loose, then you can just make half of the bust measurement. My bust measurement is 90 centimeters. Half of it minus 5 gives me 40. So right now I have more or less 40 centimeters. So if you want a tight cardigan at the end, stick to the half of the bust measurement minus 5. But if you want it loose, then you can make half of the bust measurement. And keep in mind that your yarn will probably stretch while you are working it, so you might want to remove the 5 centimeters. Now remember, we started this row with 2 double crochets, the chain 2 and the double crochet, and the 2 are 2 double crochets that we made at the beginning. We are going to end the row again with 2 double crochets, so I'm going to skip the 2 chains. Into the third, I'll do 1 and 2 double crochets. So this time it's only 2 double crochets. I am done, but I still have some chains left, so I'll get rid of the excess chains. To cut the excess yarn, we are going to count 1, 2, 3 chains. We are not counting where we worked, okay? So you count 1, 2. Into the third chain, that's where I'm going to cut, okay? So cut the third chain, pull, and you pull the tail. It will make a knot. So you see, there is no need to count the number of chains that you make at the beginning. To start the next row, make 2 chains. They count as a double crochet. Turn, and we are going to walk inside the spaces. Inside the first space, make a cluster of 3 double crochets. Move to the next space and make a cluster of 3. And repeat clusters of 3 double crochets in every space. This is my last cluster. Now, on top of the 2 chains that we skipped at the beginning, make 1 double crochet. So this second row started with 1 double crochet and ends with 1 double crochet. To start row 3, chain 2, and this is going to be a repetition of the very first row. So our first row started with 2 double crochets. this will also start with 2 double crochets. So make 1 double crochet inside that first stitch, and now we have the 2 double crochets. I hope you can see them. Move to the next space, make a cluster of 3 and make your clusters in every space. Last cluster of this row 3, and now I will end the row with 2 double crochets. So do 2 double crochets on top of the chain 2, and that is it for row 3. To start row 4, make 2 chains, and row 4 is going to be a repetition of row 2. Okay, so we have only 1 double crochet at the beginning, which are represented by these 2 chains. Now into the space, make the cluster, and you repeat your clusters until the end of the row, where we are going to finish with 1 double crochet. And after the last cluster, we are going to end with 1 double crochet on top of the chain 2. That is it for this row. Start the next row with 2 chains, and this time we need 2 double crochets. This is a repetition of row 1. Make a double crochet in the first stitch to have your 2 double crochets at the beginning of the row. Into the space, the next space, you work your cluster of 3 double crochets. So you get the point. We are going to be repeating only 2 rows, row 1 and row 2. Row 1 starts and ends with 2 double crochets, while row 2 starts and ends with 1 double crochet. That's the only difference. So keep repeating row 1 and row 2 until you have your desired length for the cardigan. I mean your bottom to top length of the cardigan. The back panel is ready. We will leave roughly 15 centimeters in the middle for the neckline. Then count on each side to make sure that you have the same number of stitches. Now for the front panels, start a foundation chain that will have the length or the number of stitches that you have for each side. For me, that corresponds to 20 chains or 20 stitches, so I'm making 20 chains. And now we'll repeat the same process. Into the third chain, make a double crochet, and you skip the next 2 stitches. Into the third one, make 3 double crochets. make the sleeves, start by taking the measurement around your shoulder and remove 6 centimeters from it. That gives you the starting width of the sleeve. Place your markers and then count to make sure that you have the same number of rows in each side, on the back and the front panel. Now I'm going to reattach the yarn and make 2 single crochets per row of granny stitch. That means right here where I reattached the yarn, there I'm making 1 single crochet and then a second single crochet still into that last stitch of the granny stitch, or this row of granny stitch. So I'll make a second single crochet, then move to the next row of granny stitch. There I'm making again 1 and a second single crochet, move to the next row of granny stitch and make 2 single crochets inside. Next row of granny stitch, into the last stitch of the row, make 2 single crochets. Continue like that, 2 single crochet per row of granny stitch until you meet your second stitch marker. After this row of single crochet, chain 2 and turn the work, and right there where we did the 2 chains, make a double crochet, then skip the next 2 stitches into the third one, make 3 double crochets, then skip the next 2 stitches into the third one, make 3 double crochets. Keep repeating that sequence, so skip 2 single crochet into the third one, make 3 double crochets. Repeat that sequence until you are 2 stitches away from the end. This is my last group of 3 double crochets, and after that I have only 2 stitches left. Normally we are supposed to have like a third one where I'll do the last stitch of the row, but it doesn't really matter at this point. Just skip 1 stitch into the very last stitch of the row, make 2 double crochets. That is it for the first row of granny stitch. Chain 2, and to start the second row of granny stitch for the sleeve, make a cluster of 3 double crochets into this space, then move to the next space, another cluster of 3, and it goes on exactly the way we did the body, the panels for the body. Repeat your clusters of 3 until you get to the last space where you do the last cluster of 3, and we will end the row with a double crochet. And then the last stitch, this row ends with 1 double crochet. Now to start row 3 of the sleeves, chain 2, make a double crochet into the very first stitch, then move to the space and make a cluster of 3 there. Repeat the cluster of 3, the granny stitches, until you reach row 6. I'll meet you at the beginning of row 7. So this is row 1, 2, 3 of the sleeves. I'll meet you at the beginning of row 7. Make 2 chains to start row 7. Row 7 is supposed to start with 2 double crochets, so normally I should made a double crochet right here into this very first stitch, but I want to create a decrease on row 7, so instead of making the double crochet right into the very first stitch, I'm going to make it into the next space. So into the next space I'll make 1 double crochet, then I will move into the next space and make a cluster of 3 there. And for this row 7, I'm going to make the clusters of 3 in every space until I have 1 last space left. This is my last space. I'm not going to make a cluster of 3. Instead, I will make only 1 double crochet. So into that last space of the row, 1 double crochet, and then the last stitch is going to be a double crochet into the very last stitch. And that ends row 7. To start row 8, chain 2, done, and this is going to be a row without decrease, so a normal row. You are going to do 3 double crochets, so a cluster of 3, not into the space between these 2 double crochets. They are supposed to be like closed double crochets, so move to the real space, not the one between the 2 double crochets at the beginning of the row, or the next space, right? Into that space make your cluster of 3. And continue making clusters of 3 into the spaces, the real spaces, until you get to the end of the row. That means that you are going to work the clusters of 3 into the spaces until you come to the last one, and you ignore this space between the 2 double crochets. Okay, so these are supposed to be closed double crochets, just ignore the space between them. You work into the real space of clusters. After the last cluster of 3 into the last real space, on top of the last stitch of the row, make a double crochet, and that ends row 8. Row 9 to 14 are also going to be normal rows without decrease, so start row 9 with 2 chains, then inside that very first stitch make a double crochet and work your clusters of 3 into the spaces. Do your row 9 to 14, and I'll meet you on row 15 for another decrease. Okay, I'm now ready to work on row 15. And row 15 is actually one of those rows that starts and ends with 2 double crochets. I'm making the decreases only on rows that start and end with 2 double crochets. I found it easier to do it that way. So let's start row 15 with 2 chains, then turn the work, and instead of making the second double crochet into the very first stitch, I'll rather make it into the space. So go into the space, make a double crochet, then repeat clusters until you have 1 last space left. And into the last space, instead of making a cluster, make only 1 double crochet, then end the row with 1 double crochet on top of the last stitch. Now chain 2 to start row 16, and row 16 is going to be a row without decrease, so make a cluster into every space. So continue working without decrease, you work normally until row 22, and the next decrease is going to happen on row 23. The decrease that I'm making now on row 23 is going to be my last decrease because I'm happy with the width around the wrist that I'm reaching at this point. But depending on your body size, on the yarn that you're using, you might need to do few more decreases to have your desired wrist measurement. If that is your case, then your next decrease is going to be on row 31, and the next one, the following one, will be on row 39. So the sequence is 1 row with decrease, 7 rows without decrease, until the width of the panel corresponds to how big you want the sleeve to be around your wrist. So for me, I will continue adding rows without decrease until I reach my total length or desired length for the sleeve. After my last decrease on row 23, I made 12 more rows. Now time to work on the cuff. Start with 2 chains. They count as the first double crochet of the row, so skip that very first stitch. Then do 1 double crochet in every stitch. Into the second stitch, you start with 1 double crochet, move to the next stitch, double crochet, and so on until the end of the row. Only double crochets. To start the next row of the cuff, make 2 chains, turn, and we are going to use front and back post double crochet. So you skip the first double crochet, and we will do a front post on the second double crochet. So insert your hook from the back, push the double crochet to the front, and make a double crochet. That's the front post. Yarn over. For the back post, insert the hook in a way that you push the double crochet to the back, then you make a double crochet. One more time, insert the hook for the front post. From the back, you push the double crochet to the front. That's the front post. Then for the back post, insert the hook from the back, but this time you push the double crochet to the back and you make a double crochet. So those are front and back post. Alternate between front and back post until you get to the last stitch of the row where I'm going to meet you. And on top of the last stitch, make a double crochet, and that ends the first row of front and back post. Start with 2 chains to make the next row. Again, skip the first stitch because the 2 chains count as a double crochet. For the second stitch, for me it looks like a back post, okay, so I'm going to do a back post there, and the next stitch rather looks like a front post, and I'm going to do a front post there. So where it looks like a front post, make a front post. Where it looks like a back post, make a back post. Again, end this row with a double crochet on top of the last stitch of the row, then chain 2, and for me I'm going to add 2 more rows of front and back post. So that will make it 5 rows for the cuff, but you may add more rows if you want a longer cuff. That is it for the first sleeve. Repeat the same process to make the second sleeve. Now with the wrong side out, we are going to sew the sides and the sleeve. Reattach the yarn and going through the front and the back panels, make single crochet, and I'm going to make 2 single crochets per row of granny stitch. Almost done. The last step is the ribbing at the bottom and around the collar. I will start from one of the front panels, reattach my yarn, and then make a first round of double crochet. So I'm going to make 2 double crochets per row of granny stitch. So inside each row I'm going to make 2 double crochets. So make the double crochets across. You go across the collar, then the other front panel. You go through the bottom until you come back where we started from. Of course, when you reach the collar level, you see that the stitches are clearly visible, so you just make 1 double crochet into every stitch, so on top of every double crochet. At the end, slip stitch into the first double crochet of the row. Now chain 2 that count as a double crochet, then make front and back post double crochet the way we did for the cuff. Front and back post around until you come back at the end or at the beginning of the row. Again, at the end, slip stitch into the 2 chains that we did at the beginning of the row, and that's the end. Of course, if you like, you can add more rows to the ribbing, but for me it's enough. Once you are done, hide the tails and that will be it. I hope you liked the tutorial. If you did, please give it a thumbs up, subscribe, and I will see you in my next video.